Have you ever wondered if a small message could change someone's life? Could an anonymous note make someone feel less alone during their darkest days? Today, we'll explore a magical story about a wall, a place where warm messages have touched countless hearts. But behind those uplifting words lies a sad and inspiring tale about a man who almost gave up, until a tiny piece of paper held him back. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional stories filled with humanity and meaningful messages, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our stories. Stay with us for the next 10 seconds, this story might just change the way you see the small things in life. Let Heart Glow walk with you on your journey to find light, even in the darkest moments. Now, let's begin the story of the Message Wall in Detroit. Maya was a young woman living in Detroit, a city known for its emotional stories and storms of economic hardship that seemed never-ending. Her life was simple, but full of challenges. Every morning, Maya would wake up at 6 a.m., step out of her tiny rented room, and begin her walk to the small grocery store where she worked. It was a modest little shop on a quiet street in the city, and Maya worked there to make ends meet. The walk wasn't long, just about 15 minutes, but for Maya, each morning felt like a special moment. That street, with its old buildings and makeshift storefronts, was the place she had lived for many years. It had witnessed change, hardship, and countless memories she carried with her. And on that same street stood an old wall, one that had quietly become a part of Maya's everyday life. It was a thick, mossy concrete wall, covered in faded graffiti and scribbled messages. Every day, Maya walked past it, glanced at it, but never thought it would mean anything important in her life. To her, it was just part of the scenery, like street lamps or patches of grass along the sidewalk. Still, every now and then, as she walked by, she felt as if the wall was watching her, like it held a secret she couldn't quite grasp. But she never dwelled on it. Maya's routine was simple and repetitive. She believed nothing remarkable would ever happen on that path. But no one, not even Maya, could have guessed that very wall would one day mark the beginning of a deeply emotional journey. One that would change her life, and the lives of many others. One autumn morning, as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window of Maya's room, she stepped outside feeling a little worn out. Though she tried hard to stay optimistic, life's burdens made her feel as though she was standing in front of an unscalable cliff. That day, unlike others, she felt a strong need to do something different. She stepped out and turned her eyes toward the old wall. As she walked quietly, something unexpected made her slow down. On the steps near the wall sat an elderly man, his face hidden beneath silver hair, his clothes worn and tattered. He was curled up, his shoulders gently trembling. Maya didn't hear him cry, but she knew he was crying. It was as if every sound around her faded into silence as she stood there, watching. She couldn't take her eyes off him. She could feel the loneliness and pain radiating from him. A sense of unease rose within her. Questions swirled in her mind. Why was he crying? What pain had led him here? But she couldn't do anything. So she kept walking. Until, just as she neared the wall, a thought flashed through her mind. Is there something I can do to help him? She stopped. Looked around. No one was there. Time felt frozen. From her pocket, Maya pulled out a small piece of paper and a pen. She wrote a simple line, not long, but full of meaning. We still have tomorrow to begin again. Maya carefully stuck the small note onto a corner of the wall, right where the man could see it. She wasn't sure if he would actually read the words, but she felt like she had done something small, yet meaningful. She kept walking, but deep inside, a flicker of hope had sparked. It felt like a soft breeze, gentle but enough to lift her spirits just a little. No one knew that in that very moment, Maya wasn't just leaving a message for the man, she was also sending one to herself. A quiet reminder that even in the toughest of times, there's always a chance to begin again. Like every other morning, Maya walked to the corner grocery store, cloth bag in hand with her usual breakfast items. Her mind still lingering on the note she had left behind the day before. She didn't know if the man had read it, or if her words had meant anything to him at all. All she knew was that something inside her had urged her to act, to do something, even something as small as a handwritten note. A note that might, just might, bring a glimmer of hope to someone else. As she passed by the old wall, something unexpected caught her eye. A woman was standing nearby, intently reading a new note that had been pinned up. Maya paused, curious to know if this woman was reading her message or if she had simply stopped at random. The woman looked up, eyes tired, carrying a weight that life had clearly etched into her face. She leaned closer, touched the note, and quietly read aloud to herself, "You are stronger than you think." It was as if the words had touched her heart directly. She smiled, a faint, fleeting smile, like a soft breeze, but one that warmed Maya's heart. The woman turned around, looking as though she were searching for someone. But no one was nearby, only the sound of traffic and hurried footsteps from passers-by. She turned again and walked away, yet Maya felt it. Even in that brief moment, the message had offered a kind of quiet comfort, easing the woman's burdens if only just a little. Maya stood still, watching her go, a surge of unexplainable emotion rising in her chest. For the first time, she realized that a tiny message, a nameless act, could shift something inside someone she had never met. They didn't know each other's names. They knew nothing about each other. But in that moment, they were connected by something invisible, but very real. And Maya felt that somehow, she had done something big. Even if it was small, from that day on, Maya began writing little notes every morning before work. It no longer felt strange or awkward. The notes slowly became part of her routine, a quiet ritual she couldn't skip. Each morning, before walking into the grocery store, she would stop by the wall and stick on a new note. Sometimes it was a word of encouragement, sometimes a kind wish. Other times, it was simply a hopeful phrase meant to bring faith in tomorrow. "Today is a new day," or "Smile, you're not alone." These were the kinds of things Maya would write. No one knew it was her, and that gave Maya a sense of peace. She didn't want recognition. She only wanted a quiet place to share a bit of love, a touch of light, for strangers she would never see again. She didn't need thanks. She didn't want credit. All she hoped for was that this wall would always remain a space for anonymous messages, a sanctuary for lonely hearts in search of hope. Maya often changed the messages she wrote. She didn't want anyone to feel bored or disappointed when approaching the wall. The notes had to feel fresh, full of hope. Some days she wrote, "Everything will be okay. Just hang in there a little longer." Those words were like a way for her to remind herself that no matter how hard life got, there was always a light at the end of the tunnel. And through those little notes, she felt a magical kind of connection, even if it lasted only a fleeting moment. A week passed, and Maya began to notice something unusual. One day, as she paused to post a new note on the wall, she saw a man on a motorbike stop and walk over. He leaned in to read the message she had just written. Unlike the others before him, this man didn't just read it, he pulled out his phone and took a picture. Maya was a little surprised, but simply smiled and walked away. She didn't know what to say, but the moment left her feeling different. The wall, these messages, were no longer just hers. The next day, as she passed by the wall, she noticed a new piece of paper placed right beneath the message she had written the day before. It was a simple but powerful note: "Don't give up. You've got this." Maya stopped and stared at the message, her heart swelling with emotion. A stranger, someone she might never meet, had left a note. It felt like an invisible thread connecting them, as if people had begun sharing a common space, even without knowing one another, and so it continued. Day by day, the wall slowly transformed into a place where people came to share their thoughts, to search for faith. The anonymous notes, written by unnamed hands, carried a single message: "We are not alone." Passers-by would pause, read, and some of them would leave a message too, even if it was just a few words. The wall became part of life in Detroit, an unnamed symbol of hope. Of connection, of love. Maya never thought of herself as important in this story. She was just a small girl living in a bustling city, simply wanting to send a bit of light into someone's darkest day. Every morning, all she needed was to see someone stop and read one of her notes, and that was enough to make her feel fulfilled. No thank yous, no glances, no words were necessary. She continued her journey, writing and leaving her notes every morning, quietly, gently. She knew the wall no longer belonged to her alone. It had become a place for anyone in need of encouragement, of a little hope, even if it was just a tiny sentence. And Maya, though she never sought fame or attention, still felt she was part of something much bigger. Something that had quietly begun to connect strangers' hearts, even if they never met. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next inspiring stories. At Heart Glow, we share stories of kindness, transformation, and life's most meaningful lessons. Be a part of this loving community and help us spread these positive messages to the world. Winter had begun to creep through every alley of Detroit, bringing with it biting winds and a steady, cold drizzle. Maya could feel the shift in the air as the last leaves fell from the trees, making way for the unforgiving chill. She stepped out of her house, wrapped tightly in a thick coat, and hurried to the corner grocery store. The sky was gray and heavy that day, not a ray of sunlight to be found, only layers of fog and low-hanging clouds pressing down. As she passed a wall she usually walked by without a thought, Maya suddenly stopped. Something felt different. A man was standing there, eyes fixed intently on the little notes pinned to the wall. He wore a long gray overcoat, thick and worn, his shoulders slightly hunched as though carrying an invisible burden. His face looked gaunt, weathered by time, with sunken cheeks and skin darkened from exposure. His hair, once probably neat, was now a mess of silver strands. Yet it wasn't his appearance that stopped Maya, it was his eyes. They were filled with sorrow, as if searching for something hidden within the words on the wall. Maya stayed still, watching quietly from a distance. She didn't know why the man lingered there so long, reading each slip of paper with such intensity, as if they held a kind of gravity that pulled him in. Her chest grew heavy. She didn't know him, had never seen him before, but somehow she knew, those notes had touched something deep inside him. Compassion welled up in her chest, anchoring her to the spot. It felt like she had stumbled into the middle of a story, one she didn't yet understand. She didn't move. She was used to seeing people stop for a moment to glance at the wall, maybe smile or snap a photo, but never anyone like this. The man seemed caught in another world, far removed from the noise and rush of the street behind him. His eyes paused on one note in particular, and Maya felt a shiver run through her. It was one she had written just the morning before: "You haven't reached the end of the road. Just stay one more day." She had no idea why she wrote those words. They came to her like a whisper, a quiet instinct. But now, watching this man read them, she felt something click, an invisible thread connecting them. The words seemed to reach into his soul, stirring emotions too deep to name. He stood frozen, eyes locked on the paper, as if it might offer him freedom, or maybe just comfort. After a long silence, the man finally turned and walked away. He didn't hurry. His steps were slow, burdened by something heavy and unseen. Maya's heart clenched. She wanted to call out to him, to tell him it would be okay, that he wasn't alone. But the words never left her lips. She just stood there, watching as his figure faded into the morning mist. The next day, when Maya returned to the wall, he was there again. This time he stood farther back, not looking at her, just quietly reading each note she had posted. Maybe, Maya thought, he had become a part of this ritual, not because of the paper, but because of what the words gave him: a little peace, a little hope. She couldn't take her eyes off him. There was something sacred in the way he stood there, unhurried, immersed in the quiet. People passed by with only a glance, but none lingered like Maya. He had become part of the wall itself, a silent presence woven into these untold stories she wrote every morning. Maya began to notice more. Every morning, he appeared right on time, standing before the wall, reading every single message as if soaking up every word. Sometimes he stood still, his eyes deep in thought. Sometimes he lowered his head as if remembering something long buried. But he never said a word. When he finished, he walked away without leaving a trace. Only his silhouette remained in her memory. She felt an inexplicable bond with him. She didn't know why he came each day, but some part of her felt calm knowing he did. It made her believe the little pieces of paper were doing something that mattered, even if it was just for a fleeting moment in his day. Day after day, he kept returning. But something changed. He wasn't just reading the notes anymore, he was caring for them. One morning, Maya arrived to find that a few of her papers, blown off by the wind, had been carefully reattached. Not only that, but some new notes had been laminated, each one protected in plastic so the rain and wind wouldn't destroy them. Maya felt an indescribable emotion. She couldn't believe her eyes. That man, the one she had never spoken to, was taking care of her little paper notes as if they were something precious. She didn't understand why he was doing it, but she could feel the care, the respect he had for the words she had left behind. It wasn't just a simple act, it was a sign that those notes meant something to him, that they were bringing him something she couldn't quite know. Maya stood there, watching him from a distance, her heart full of emotion. She didn't dare approach, she just stood and looked. A part of her wanted to know why he was doing this, but another part wanted to keep the space untouched, to preserve the wall as a place for nameless messages, for words sent out without a known sender. All she knew was that something was changing, and this wall, her little paper notes, was becoming an important part of this man's life. One morning, when Maya arrived at the wall, she saw something strange. A note had been added, not one of hers, but a different handwriting. Maya stepped closer, her hands trembling with curiosity. On the paper, the man had left a message: "I'm still here. Thanks to someone, I haven't reached the end." Maya stared at the words, her heart a whirl of emotions. She couldn't believe what she was reading. The man, the one who had shown up every morning, had now left his very first note. She didn't know what to do, but inside her, a quiet joy began to rise. She realized that her messages were more than just simple words, they had created a connection, a silent understanding. This man, though he had never spoken, had found a way to feel and express what he needed to say through these little notes. Maya stood there, eyes fixed on the paper, her heart filled with confusion and warmth. She felt a deep and indescribable emotion reading the man's words. She wanted to run to him, to tell him that she was the one who wrote those messages, that she, too, understood what he was feeling, but she couldn't. She didn't want to break the sacred space they had built together, she felt like she was standing at a crossroads. She wanted to share her feelings, to tell him that he wasn't alone. But she also knew that sometimes, the most beautiful things are the ones that don't need to be spoken. The notes had already said everything. She stood there, gazing at the wall, letting herself feel the silence of that space. A part of her hoped that even if she would never fully know this man's story, they had already shared something special, something that didn't require words, only simple slips of paper. This week is completely different from the usual days for Maya. The cold wind howls outside the window, with each sharp gust seeping through the walls of the house, making everything outside seem to freeze in place. The numbness of the long winter days makes her body sluggish, her eyes tired, and her hands cold. Maya can't get out of bed, as the symptoms of a severe cold prevent her from doing anything. She lies still in the dark room. With only the faint light from a small desk lamp illuminating her surroundings, 3 days pass, and the room remains silent, with no movement except for the howling wind outside. The wall in front of her, where she had once shared scraps of paper, seems to remain silent with her. There are no new notes, no hurried scribbles, no words of encouragement anymore. Maya feels more alone than ever. Although these weren't real conversations, the notes always gave her an unusual warmth, as if someone was always near, sharing her silent thoughts without the need for words. During these days, Maya no longer feels the connection to the man. She starts to wonder if he even knows about her condition. She can't think of any reason why there hasn't been a note during her illness. She blames herself for not leaving a message for him, to let him know she cared for him too, but now it's too late. The third day passes in strange silence, and Maya feels the emptiness of the room. Her heart is filled with a sense of hollowness, as if a part of her is missing. On the fourth morning, light pours into the room through the window, making the air feel fresher. Maya wakes up, still tired, but she feels an odd sense of relief. She tries to stand up, though her legs are still weak, and walks over to the familiar paper wall, where the notes had once given her peace. She didn't expect anything new, but when she saw the familiar cardboard, a strange feeling rose within her. On it, a large hurriedly written note appeared: "Are you okay? The wall misses you." Maya felt a gentle joy rise in her heart. It felt like a warm wave washing over her, easing her weariness. The man hadn't forgotten her, even though she hadn't been able to approach the wall in 3 days. For some reason, those words made her feel warm. She smiled softly, then took the pen and wrote a few simple words in response: "Just a little tired, but my heart is still warm." She finished writing, looked at her own words, and felt a subtle connection, something that couldn't be expressed in words. These notes were not just lifeless scribbles, they were a bridge between two souls. Even though she had never seen his face, she felt that they understood each other, even if only through brief notes. This was the magic that words could bring, a connection between strangers without the need for physical presence. Maya stood and looked at the words she had just written, feeling her hands tremble. She couldn't understand how the man knew she was sick, but his messages always made her feel a sense of relief. Had he realized that she had been absent for a long time? Or had he simply sensed the silence in the air? She didn't know. And perhaps she would never know. The only thing she was sure of was that those messages had brought her a warm feeling, as if all the distance between them had suddenly disappeared. Maya sat down next to the wall, feeling that these scraps of paper were like a comfort for her weary soul. Even though she couldn't meet the man, she still felt heard. A gentle and peaceful feeling spread throughout her heart. She continued to think about those little notes, about how she would keep writing to him as a way to maintain this connection, even if it only existed in the quiet space of written words. In the days that followed, Maya continued to see the man's words appear on the cardboard. They didn't exchange spoken words, nor did they greet each other like close friends, but each note contained a piece of their shared story. She didn't know much about him, only that he quietly appeared there, leaving words and waiting for her responses. They didn't need to meet, didn't need to speak any words, but through the brief notes, they had formed an invisible, strong bond. Maya realized that in life, communication doesn't always need to be loud or showy. Sometimes, just a few sincere words can connect two souls. She didn't know when he would leave or if he would still leave more notes, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that this connection had helped her through some of the loneliest moments of her life. Maya sat by the wall, looking out the window for a long time. She felt a strange emptiness in her heart, as if all she needed was a little sharing. She didn't understand why she felt this way, but she knew that throughout this time, those little notes had been an important part of her life. Whether the man needed her messages or not, it was she who had needed this connection. Maya picked up the pen, writing slowly and sincerely. I don't know who needs this, but I will still write, because I need it too. She didn't expect a reply, but as she put the pen down, she felt a sense of relief. Sometimes, giving without expecting anything in return is what makes the heart warmer than ever. She didn't know if the man would read these words, but she knew that this was how she had made her heart feel fuller. Maya saw the words, and a sudden feeling rose in her heart. She was startled, not expecting the man to reply so profoundly. She didn't know what he meant by those words, but it made her feel a connection between them, an understanding that didn't need to be spoken. We all need each other, even when no one says it. These words made her heart ache, but they also brought a sense of comfort. Maya sat there for a long time, letting these words slowly sink into her soul. She realized that sometimes, not every feeling needs to be spoken out loud. Sometimes, silence can also be a form of sharing, and in that silence, both people can find harmony. She gently picked up the pen again, writing another note. Not knowing if anyone would read it, but she knew that she was no longer alone in this life. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to click subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next inspiring stories. At Heart Glow, we share stories about kindness, change, and valuable life lessons. Be a part of this loving community and help us spread positive messages. Maya never thought that the small cardboard would attract the attention of the media. One cold morning, as she was on her way to work, she saw a group of reporters standing at the corner of the street where the wall appeared. They had cameras, microphones, and were interviewing local people. Maya's heart raced when one of the reporters pointed the camera towards the cardboard. She couldn't believe her eyes. The wall had been discovered. In the first article posted on the local TV station's website, the headline "Detroit's Talking Wall Corner" appeared clearly. The reporters described it as a strange phenomenon, a form of unspoken communication among the city's residents, with no one knowing who started it. At that time, Maya hadn't considered hiding her identity. She wrote just to release her emotions, and until now, she hadn't thought that her words could attract such widespread attention. However, there was one thing she found ironic. They didn't know who started it, but they called it a phenomenon. Perhaps that was what made her feel strange. She didn't want it to become a commercial game, nor did she want it to become something controlled or exploited by brands. She just wanted that corner of the wall, with messages from the heart, to remain pure and peaceful as it originally was. Not long after the article was published, the wall began to receive attention from local residents. Maya was surprised when one morning she passed by and found small notes written on pieces of paper, stuck to the wall. One note said, "Thank you for giving me a place to express my feelings." Another said, "I always felt lonely, but now I feel heard." These messages weren't long, but they were enough to bring a little joy into the lives of those who wrote them. There were students, elderly people, and even unemployed individuals, all leaving short but emotional notes. The wall, once a silent place, had become a quiet symbol of hope, connecting people who were facing difficulties and challenges in life. Maya read each note with her heart tightening. Strangers who had never met could connect through written words, feeling each other's emotions through shared feelings. She saw the little papers like short letters, offering comfort to those who were struggling, suffering. It was a message she never thought she could convey, but now, she saw it becoming part of life, part of the community. Maya stood quietly for a long moment, looking up at the messages and feeling the warmth they brought. Even though no one knew who wrote those first words, everyone knew one thing: the wall was a place where emotions could soar freely, not bound by any surrounding barriers. As the wall became a symbol of sharing and connection, Maya felt happy, but also anxious. She didn't want the wall to become a mere entertainment, a place where people came to take photos and leave. She didn't want this place of emotions to be exploited. The wall had become a private space where people could express their genuine feelings without fear of judgment. She didn't want it to become a place where people just came to check in, take pictures, and share on social media. That wasn't her purpose. When she first wrote those words, she began to feel a contradiction within herself. She was glad to see others finding comfort in the messages, but at the same time, she feared that one day, this place would be turned into something meaningless. Isn't that what happens? Simple, pure things, once commercialized, lose their essence. And the wall, if controlled by fame, would no longer be a safe space for emotions. Maya knew that sometimes, beautiful and simple things can easily be distorted in this society. After a few days of silence, Maya began to notice something strange. The man whose messages she had become familiar with no longer appeared. 3 days passed, and the wall only had messages from other residents. No word from him. Maya felt a gentle sadness, an indescribable emptiness. She didn't know what to do, didn't know if she had done something wrong, or if the man had decided to stop sharing his emotions through the messages on the wall. Perhaps he had found another place to express himself, or maybe his life had changed in ways she couldn't understand. Still, Maya felt an absence in her heart. She had gotten used to the presence of his words, used to sitting alone next to the cardboard, reading the messages he left. And now, without those words, it felt like a part of her was missing. She wondered if he was facing difficulties, or if it was simply a coincidence in life that kept him away. The next day, Maya still didn't see his appearance. She walked past the wall and stopped, looking at the other messages left by the neighborhood residents. Those words seemed to continue the conversation she had started. She felt a connection between the strangers, even though they had never met. However, the absence of the man made her heart heavy. She didn't know if he was going through something difficult or if he simply didn't want to write anymore. She felt like something was left unfinished, and she couldn't let it pass without seeking an answer. Maya couldn't stand still and wait forever. She decided to write a new message, a gentle yet sincere one, as an invitation for the connection to continue. She stuck the note on the wall, gently, but with a hopeful longing. If you're reading this, thank you for staying. She didn't expect him to reply or come back, just a thank you for sharing those words, those emotions with her. It was a reminder of respect, that everyone has the right to keep a bit of private space, but also the ability to open up when needed. Maya stood still for a while, looking at the new note, feeling the words she had just written. She didn't expect too much from the man, but just to know that the messages were not just empty words, they were a part of life, of those who were seeking comfort in difficult times. As she walked away, her heart felt lighter. The next morning, when Maya came back, she saw something different. The note she had stuck to the wall was no longer the only one. Another small, simple note was stuck right next to it. Maya walked up close, squinting to read each word carefully. I'm here. Today I cried when I read your note. These words were short, but they carried an emotion that couldn't be fully expressed in words. Maya felt her heart tighten. She knew it was the voice of the man she had been thinking about in the past few days, the one she had been worrying about whether he would return. And now, through those words, she understood that he hadn't just read her message, but had truly felt it in a deep and real way. The silence had been broken, and an invisible connection between them had been awakened. Maya stood there, silently, as if time had stopped. She could feel the man's emotions through each written word. I'm here. This was a statement that he was still near, that even though they may be distant or unable to meet, feelings and sharing still existed. Today I cried when I read your note. These words made Maya unable to hold back her own emotions. She knew that sometimes, just one sentence, one small action, could change someone's mood. She couldn't imagine the pain, the loneliness that the man must have gone through, but through the tears he shed, she felt a deep empathy. Maya sat down next to the wall, looking at the small note, feeling like she was sharing a very special moment with this stranger. She no longer felt scared. Even though they were just simple messages, they gave her the feeling that, even though life might be full of difficulties, there are still moments when people can find empathy and comfort from others they have never known. On a weekend morning, when Maya walked to the wall as part of her daily routine, she was surprised to see a group of students busy cleaning around the area. They were wiping down, reattaching the papers that had blown away, and even setting up a small tarp to protect the messages from the rain. Maya watched this scene silently, unable to help but feel proud. This was something she had never thought of, a community effort showing that the messages she wrote meant not only something to her or the man, but also to a group of people who wanted to share hope. She stood at a distance, afraid to approach, fearing she would disrupt the natural atmosphere of those working. However, inside, Maya felt a strange warmth. People seemed to have turned the wall into a part of their lives, not just a place to read, but a place to preserve and express their own hopes. Maya never intended to reveal the truth about herself, about the first messages she had written. She stood from afar, watching the students and quietly thinking about contributing more to those words, but not wanting to cause any noise or draw attention to herself. So, she slowly approached and helped the students by gently adding new papers with the same messages she had written before. The students had no idea that she was the one who had started everything. Maya simply wanted to be part of this action, like an invisible friend, a part of this community. While pasting the papers, she quietly thanked the people who had helped, without explaining or claiming to be the first one. She just hoped that the words would continue to bring hope to those who needed it. And so, day by day, Maya quietly continued her small actions, like a part of the larger picture of sharing. Maya never expected the simple messages she wrote, just to shed a little light for someone, to have such great power. One day, when she arrived at the wall, she found a letter tucked inside an envelope beneath one of her papers. She didn't know who had left it there, but she carefully opened the envelope and read the note inside. "I was about to end everything the day you wrote the first line. But that message kept me going." Maya froze. She couldn't believe it, the message she had written had saved someone's life. The man in the letter wrote that, on the day Maya wrote the words, "We still have tomorrow to try again," he was struggling with negative thoughts and despair that seemed insurmountable. But those words, that strange care and expectation for a better future, helped him decide not to give up. Maya choked up as she read those words. She could never have imagined that her small act could profoundly impact someone in this way. The letter continued, and Maya read the painful words that followed. The man shared his life story, a former billionaire who once had everything, wealth, power, and family. But everything collapsed when the economy hit a crisis. What he couldn't save was his family life. His wife left with their children, and they no longer kept in touch with him. Having lost everything, he was left with emptiness and a sense of anonymity. He lived in uncertain days, with no purpose, no motivation. But then, Maya's words reignited a spark of hope in him, helping him realize that no matter how difficult life may be, there is always a reason to keep going, a reason to live. The simplicity of those words made him realize that even though anyone could fall into darkness, there is always a way to find light if you recognize the small opportunities around you. At the end of the letter, the man wrote words that made Maya unable to hold back her tears. "I don't want anyone to know who I was. But I want to thank you, the one who wrote to me without even knowing." These words were a heartfelt, deeply thankful share. Maya couldn't believe that she had impacted someone so profoundly, without even knowing it. She had written those messages simply because she thought they might help someone, but she never imagined they could save a life, helping someone decide not to give up. She lowered her head, silently feeling the emotion in her heart. Those words of thanks, though unnecessary, were like an invaluable gift to her. It was a confirmation of what she had done, of the quiet efforts she had never expected to be repaid. Maya folded the letter, placed it in her bag, and put up a new message on the wall, as a way to continue spreading light to those who needed it. "If we can still write, it means we can still live." Maya sat down by the wall, looking at the messages she had written over time, and the messages the man had left. These invisible stories, connected through short lines of text, had become a part of her life. She didn't need to respond to the letter because she knew that her actions had already said everything. Each line of text, each message, was an encouragement, a sign of love, and more importantly, a promise that no matter how hard life gets, there's always a reason to keep going. She put another message on the wall, to remind herself and those passing by, "If we can still write, it means we can still live." On a quiet Sunday morning, as the soft sunlight gently filtered through the trees along the empty street, Maya arrived at the wall as she did every day. She always came early, while everyone else was still asleep. And the wall was hers to tend to. But today, something was different. The message on the wall wasn't like the one she had written before. It was a bold, clear, and decisive sentence: "Today, I lived because of the message from a stranger." Maya stopped, unable to take her eyes off those words. A mix of sorrow and joy filled her, like a small flame that was strong enough to warm her heart. These words weren't hers, they belonged to someone else, but they made her heart beat faster than ever. Part of her wondered, who wrote this? And why did they write it? But more than anything, Maya felt an invisible connection, a deep resonance. Someone had survived, not because they had a loved one or someone to help them, but because of a message on this wall. And this made Maya feel like she was not alone on this journey, in the life she had chosen. At that moment, Maya realized that the person who wrote this message hadn't just scribbled something hastily, as she often did. They had taken time, effort, and care to create a perfect piece of work. The writing was done with a bold pen, each stroke clear and direct. What was special about it was not just the message, but the wooden frame around it. Someone hadn't just written, but had also protected the message, creating a small space so that the words wouldn't be ruined, wouldn't fade with time. Maya stood silently, feeling the thoughtfulness in every detail of this scene. Someone had come very early to do this, leaving no name, no trace other than the words. Maya felt a deep appreciation for this person. Even though she didn't know who they were, their actions made her realize that these messages on the wall had become part of something much bigger, beyond what she could have imagined. This was not just a wall with messages, it was a space where strangers could connect, share thoughts, hopes, and unspoken emotions. Maya stared at the words, the stranger's message echoing in her mind. She felt a strange sensation, like a call from deep within. Perhaps the writer had gone through pain, just like her. And perhaps, inside that person, there was also a part of Maya. They were all just people overcoming the hardships of life, hoping that others wouldn't have to be alone in their journey. Maya smiled gently, feeling comforted by the knowledge that her words had touched someone's heart, that they had helped someone rise after their fall. She quietly took a piece of paper, not to respond, but to continue her own story. She wrote, "I've never saved anyone. I've only hurt. And I don't want anyone else to be alone in that pain." These words came from deep within her heart, a truth she had lived through. Maya didn't need to say anything more. The words she wrote, the notes she had put on the wall, were all silent actions, but they still had the power to help someone feel less alone. She stuck the paper on the wall, feeling peace spread within her. Each word she wrote was an understanding, a sharing that didn't require too many explanations. Sometimes, a small action, a note, could change someone's day. After putting the paper on the wall, Maya stood still for a long time, looking back at what she had just written. She didn't expect attention or thanks, she just hoped that someone would read it and find comfort in it. Sometimes, words couldn't fully express emotions, but actions could. That was why Maya continued to visit this wall every morning, because she believed that a message, even a brief one, could be a connection between strangers. When Maya turned to leave, she didn't feel any fatigue or worry. On the contrary, she felt light, as if someone had embraced her, as though all the burdens in her heart had been shared. Even though no one knew who she was, even though the wall might only be a temporary place to express thoughts. In that moment, Maya felt like she was being comforted. Every morning, she felt this, even in those quiet moments when no one was paying attention. After receiving the last letter, the man never appeared again. Yet, Maya knew that their connection had never truly broken. The messages continued to be written, and the wall continued to breathe with the messages of nameless strangers. Sometimes, other strangers came, not just to write, but also to add something beautiful to the space, a fresh flower, or a laminated sheet of paper to protect the message. These actions were not spoken, but they said everything. They were a quiet continuation, a series of pieces that would never end. Maya realized that even though the man no longer appeared, the wall and the messages on it had become part of those who came after. Each act was a step in the continuation, a way to send hope to the next person. Maya continued to write every morning, not because anyone asked her to, but because of herself. The wall continued to breathe, continued to echo with messages, still alive because of the hearts of those who had once felt broken. And Maya, though she couldn't see it, knew that her words could still save the lonely souls, the battered hearts. She wrote not just for strangers, but for herself, as every time she wrote, it felt like she was finding a part of herself, a part she had left behind in the pain of the past. The wall became a symbol of hope, of life, of hearts that never stopped beating, even when they had to go through immense trials. And Maya, every morning, continued to stick up new messages, to continue the journey, and so, Maya continued her journey. Every morning, she went to the wall to write, to send love, to connect with nameless strangers. Her story, though simple, carried within it a great power, the power of sharing, of empathy, and how small actions could change a day, a life. Every word she wrote was a reminder that we are never truly alone. And that love, understanding, could come from the most unexpected places, from strangers, from hastily written notes, and this story is not just Maya's. It is the story of all of us. Each of us can make small changes in someone else's life. A word of encouragement, a kind action, or sometimes just a simple note. Love doesn't always have to be shown in grand gestures, sometimes, it's the small acts that each of us can do every day. So, if this story has touched your heart, let it continue to spread. Share your stories, your notes, and make a change today. Don't forget to visit the Heart Glow channel, where every story, every small act can light up someone's heart. Join us in spreading love, bringing hope, and helping people feel that they are never alone. We believe that each person can become a light for someone else, as long as you start. Let Heart Glow light up your heart and the hearts of the world.